Hi, everyone. Delighted to have a second chat on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds with comics creator, artist Randy Emberlin. Randy, thank you for jumping in, joining, and thank you for talking with me after a very delicious and healthy lunch.
Yeah. Well, I have to please the other half who does hard work in the kitchen, right? So I can enjoy it. And
Yeah,
so now actually what I feel like doing is taking a nap. So
yes. We'll
I
try
got to
not to
stay
put you
awake
to
for
sleep.
25 minutes.
We'll
But
we'll
just
try to
yeah.
keep it exciting. I'm
Okay.
surrounded by a couple of dogs, so maybe they will bark at some point. Always a good alarm clock.
Yeah.
Um, well, the last time we talked, we were talking a good bit about the Amazing Spider-Man. Uh, you work there with Carnage. I know that you're also a person who's worked on Doctor Strange, G.I. Joe, and a number of other projects. So delighted to dig into those things a little bit more. And I think by means of a first question, I was going to ask about your journey from animation to comics.
Yeah, that was where I was. I had done stuff in at Portland State in film, and I started out in a liberal arts college at Whitworth, and I knew I didn't want to pursue the fine arts thing. I enjoyed the drawing and painting classes, but after a year of that, I came back and was looking for more commercial art. And
Mhm,
then I
mhm,
found an animation collective in Portland. That after I took this class at the art museum, and the instructor, I think he was like a cameraman at Channel 12 or something like that, and he gave us plans. You could build your own, animation, not a really an animation stand, but actually an animation board with peg bars, and you could use it to shoot animation, really amateur, but it still worked with all of the Acme system. And so you had to order some stuff from Cartoon Color, and so I did. I built that, and I used it for years.
mhm.
And I eventually got a disc like everybody else, one of the expensive, animator discs, and had a board built for that. But those little portable boards, it folded up, and I could take it with me on vacation, and it was crazy. So I got into animation. It was spec. I did it with my friend Don Wallace, who has been my colorist until he passed away last year. And he did a lot of the digital coloring on my Spider-Man prints and stuff that we looked at a couple last time. But we, did a completely spec thing for a record store. And this is where Chris Warner, who also helped me get into Marvel, he was working at a record store. And we did this animation of a character. It was very Disney. It was like a pterodactyl. We called him Pterodactyl, right? And he's walking through the forest, and we laid it all out and did the storyboards. And Don was into doing airbrush. So he did really beautiful, like rich airbrush backgrounds and jungle scenes. And he walks into a record store that's like a hut, that has a sign, and we, put For What It's Worth records on it, which is where he was working. And anyway, just went ahead and did this commercial where he goes in, it's all mysterious, and he flips through these albums, and left spaces in those days to video in information. They could edit video stuff for like sales and stuff. So
Mhm.
we made it we were thinking ahead, they can do something with this. And it was a 30-second spot, so it was a lot of work, but we didn't care if we sold it or not. We thought this is just something that'll show we can do animation. And we hand painted the cells, and bought all the cartoon colored paints and all that stuff, and we sold it. And it was like they had what was it, co-op money. And so these record stores, they had a chain of, they had co-op money, and maybe it was from a distributor or something, but we got $2,500. So we were like, yeah, this is great. Back in those days,
Wow.
I was like the 70s, and anyway, that led to other projects. And then, like I said, the animation collective in Portland, we heard about, and we went to one of those meetings. And then there were like 25 people interested in animation. And I met my other partner there, Jim Bradrick, who's still alive, lives up in Washington. And so Jim and Don and I worked with the animation collective on some of their, they'd have commercials, but if you have 16 people or 8 people, nobody gets any money. I mean, you're not
Right,
making
right.
money, you're just learning. And they had their own animation stand. It wasn't a Oxbury $1 million, animation stand, but there were two of those in Portland, two, actual production facilities. And we did work with them sometimes. And in the end, the three of us formed a partnership and split off. We still used assistants from there, and we had taught some classes through the art museum, and we trained a couple of people that wanted to be in animation. So, it was usually the three of us as partners doing commercials with an assistant each.
Hmm.
Sometimes you didn't need the assistant, but for a 30-second commercial, it's what, 700 drawings or 720, or usually less because you're trying to save here and there. But we needed help sometimes to get stuff produced, and we did that for like 7 years, and it was fun. We didn't make enough money is the problem. I mean, the two production houses that had Oxbury's were really cool because we never shot on those, but we knew the guys that did, so we got to be in on the shoots a lot of times, so we got to see how it worked. And they were semi computerized, so you could program in moves for like if you had a pan move or a zoom move, the camera, it was already knew what to do, so when you clicked the button, it moved for the next one and moved for the next one, and you could have it go in and over and up, so you didn't have to be adjusting things by hand. So it was fun to, do that. And we did a couple of spots that won some awards, Rosie Awards in Portland, that were like for public service stuff. And we did a couple for some car companies, and one for a gas company, an oil and gas company that was big up in Alaska. And we imitated some of I mean, they always ask you to do styles that are popular. So we learned a
Right,
ton of
right.
different styles. Kurtz and Friends did a lot of animation back then, and they were, I think, in Minnesota, but they had a lot of squiggly characters and broken lines and a lot of stuff. Like there was the one, remember, with the it had to do with oil and dinosaurs, right? So it's the dinosaurs are eating, and then they turn into oil derricks that are going up and down, and and
Uh-huh.
everything keeps moving, right? You're always moving, and things are changing and metamorphosing. So we did some of those commercials. Those were pretty cool, but it was, I just wasn't going to make a living doing it. There weren't enough, and we weren't getting paid enough. And you wait so long, sometimes 90 days, to get paid. And anyway, one of the facilities closed down, and it was because one of the partners left, and it was Small Business Administration closed them down because they called their loans, in. And man, that was really just, that was freaked us out because we were owed like 16 grand still on a project, and it was like I'm going, I think it's time for me to look for something else. This is fun to do for fun, but I have to make a living. So
Yeah.
that's when my friend Chris Warner, that I think I talked about last time, we went to first and second grade and middle school, and friends, comic collectors, and we drew superheroes. He went to New York after he showed his portfolio in San Diego and saved his money, stayed with a guy that was in an apazine that we knew vaguely, and he rented in New Jersey and went over. They said, come to the office every day, and in a couple of months, you'll probably get work. You're good enough. And he did. So I contacted Chris and go, is there some way I could work at Marvel and still live in Portland? And he goes, well,
Hmm.
maybe you could be my inker. And, because we worked together on stuff. So he sent me samples of his work. And there's a method in the old method of doing it was like putting vellum on top of copies. You had like a full Xerox 11 by 17 copy, and then you had these sheets of vellum, and you had to do thinned out rubber cement and literally, drag one of those squeegee things over it so it was so thin, and put it on both the paper and that, let them dry, and then carefully seat the two together and press it down, then ink on the vellum, and then use a rubber cement, freeing device so it'll look like an eraser to separate the page and mount it. It's like, my God,
Oh,
it was a
wow.
killer
Wow.
just to do 3 pages, was a killer. But I did, and I put everything into it, and the Carl Potts was the editor, and he was a great editor because he was an artist.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
he discovered a lot of really cool people like Jim Lee and Mike Mignola, and and people like that.
Hmm.
So he liked what I did, and when an emergency came up, which was almost immediately, it's amazing. I got my opportunity to ink, and of course, I talked to Carl about it. I may have even said this to you already, but I talked to Carl about it about a year or so ago at the Denver Comic Con Fan Expo, and I said, Carl, the story is you told me that you're sending me 7 pages and they had to be done in a week, and I'd only done 3. And so I was like, yeah, I can do this. I can do one a day. I'll pull this off, man. And when the box came, there were 11 pages in it. And he goes, what? No, he goes, I didn't do, he goes, who was my assistant at that time? It's like, all right, blame must be assigned, it's like,
That's
but
right.
anyway, it was fine. I got it done, and and that's how I got the job as the inker on Alien Legion, which is a book that
Wow.
he co-owned with Alan Zelenitz, the guy who was writing it. I think they both worked on stuff, but there had been, really good artists on it, and Terry
Hmm.
Austin had been inking it, and it was cool. And then when they left, Chris sort of took over the pencils. He'd been doing backup stories, and then he took over the penciling, and then I got to be the inker. And it's funny. I think I told you this too, but the guys who lost the job, or guy, it was Will Spertasio who was inking it, and
Hmm.
and he was doing it with the help of Scott Williams. So between the two of them, they still could only get 8 or 10 pages done, maybe 11,
Wow.
half the book. Yeah, and we were in big trouble. So here I am, a total neophyte, had to pull off the other 11 pages. So, but hey, it was great. It was a great way to get into comics, and Carl was a great editor. So it was fun to work with him. And then I went to New York after that and stayed with them for about 10 days. And we went into the office every day. And Carl was good. He was always giving me work because, it was a bi-monthly book. So you only, an issue every 2 months.
Hmm.
So then Doctor Strange came available. And actually, we had a choice between some book Carl was pushing. It was called Strike Force Morituri, which we're like, what is that? And then Doctor Strange, and of course we all love Doctor Strange. Turns out he's a huge Doctor Strange and a Ditko fan, Carl. So it was
Oh,
perfect. I mean, it was like Chris and I were like, oh, absolutely, we love him from our childhood. So we got Doctor Strange. So between the two, we had a full slate of 12 books for the year. So we had six issues of this and six of that. So that was a good start. And
nice.
it was a good way to get going. Yeah. And it's just one thing leads to another. As long as you're open to editors calling you, and they liked what we were doing, and we put a lot of work into it. So we started to get some looks from people, and I don't know, I even did some work for First Comics because his roommate um, was, I don't know how it hooked up, but it was American Flag, which is Howard Chaykin's book. When
Hmm.
he left
Hmm.
that book, he handpicked Mark Badger and then me
Hmm.
to do it. And I did it for, I don't know how many issues with Mark, maybe a year or something. It was crazy. So I was doing that on top of Marvel stuff, and Chaykin's a really interesting guy. I mean, it's interesting stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
a real commercial artist, before he even did comics. So, uh,
Hmm.
but but yeah, there was a lot of stuff early on that I got to mess around, and of course Dark Horse was starting in '86, and I got into Marvel in '85, so I jumped in and got to do my Mind Walk series for the first 4 issues of Dark Horse Presents, because Mike Richardson was like, hey, how would you and Chris like to do your own characters? And we were like, yeah. So they were starting a company, and then that led to, they did the what, Comics Greatest World, or their own version of superhero stuff. So I did
Yeah.
some stuff for that, the Mark, which was one of Mike's ideas, and that eventually ended up doing Predator stuff and got to ink Chris on some of that, the early Predator stuff like Concrete Jungle, or
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm. Love those.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and then I did some later, much later on, I did some Aliens versus Predator stuff,
Hmm.
and and then of course I did Ghost. That was, I mean, when Marvel tanked in about '96 or '96, it was probably more like '97. They had already gone Chapter 11, and everybody, '96, Carl was gone. I mean, they were just laying off editors, and all my contacts were disappearing, and
Hmm.
I just thought, okay, so now what? And I got a call from Randy Stradley, who's one of the other big head editors at Dark Horse, and I knew him at Portland State. I mean, I knew him, like he was my age, and he was a friend of Chris and everything. So we were all, actually, we knew each other. All those Dark Horse people were young and about the same age. In fact,
Yeah.
Mike went to my high school. It's like he was a few years ahead of me. But
Oh, cool. Cool.
yeah, he went to the same high school. He's played basketball. I mean, he's 6'9", right, or 6'8", or something. He played basketball in Portland State even. But yeah, it was great to launch that, and that was, like I said, a year after Marvel. So I was still doing Marvel heavy duty and jumping in and doing whatever I could for Dark Horse, and it led to a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah.
Ultimately, when they tanked, when Marvel tanked pretty good, it must have been about, I don't know, '98 by the
Yeah.
time.
Somewhere
Well,
in
maybe
there.
it was
Yeah.
earlier. It may have been '97, because you know what? My dad passed away in '96, and it seems like that's when I got a call from Randy Stradley, and may have been even close to 97 when I started the dark or the Ghost run, and that
Hmm.
lasted about 3 years, and it was cool because Stradley gave me an opportunity to choose my penciler. It's like, when does the inker
Nice.
get to choose and it turned out I chose Ivan Reis or Ivan Rice, the guy
Mhm.
that's super popular now, and he did all of that Green Lantern stuff, the Brightest Day, Darkest Night, and Superman stuff, and then the Batman, Gotham stuff. I mean, some of it's just his drawing is phenomenal. He's by far the best penciler I've ever worked with, and he's a
Yeah.
nice guy. So I got to do that, and I got to watch him go from being like a Jim Lee imitator to he started looking at Terry Dodson and Adam Hughes, and his stuff got more realistic and more stylistic, and then he found himself, and I tried to get him work at Marvel, and we did some Quicksilver, and I think he did a Vision miniseries or something. But Marvel was so dumb; they wouldn't listen to me, and so DC signed him to an exclusive contract, and
Hmm.
they got him. And but it all started with like that Dave Campetti guy that was he was sort of repping all of these South American artists, and I was looking through a book of all these different artists, and I looked at Ivan's work and or Ivan, and it was you could see that he had talent. It was going to be pretty good. So it was an unusual way to get the. I got the job, and then I got to choose the penciler, and it actually was. It was a good thing because I had never done a female character book, a solo character, and Ghost was that. I mean,
Hmm.
she,
Hmm.
so it's like you're just drawing female form, female figure, female faces, all of that stuff, and I hadn't had that much practice doing it. I mean, you get those appearances in the other books, but it was really good to have to do that much work because definitely less is more when you're, inking or drawing, females.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. I mean, he did too. We were both sort of growing together at the time. So it was a really good, timely thing as I left Marvel to do that. I was
Yeah.
still doing some, freelance. They would throw junk at me. It's like Marvel was just throwing trash at me. They were like, "Yeah, we need you to do the last 8 pages of this, Spider-Man, one shot thing that that we can't get anybody to finish." It's like there's 10 people working on it. It's so typical. They'd have it'd be like 5 inkers or something. But yeah, they weren't giving me any real confidence that things were going good there. They would always tell you, when things were going bad, it's like, "Oh, Randy, it's fine. You'll get plenty of work. There'll be lots of work for you." It's like, yeah, right. It's like if the company's going down, it's like nobody cares. It's every man for himself. But it was good. It worked for Dark Horse, and that bridged a gap. And then I did Star Wars stuff after that with Paul Galassi. It was the Crimson Empire 2 series, and Diana Schutz was the editor, and she and I always got along, and that was good. That was a good experience. There's like what 6 books, and they were all like 28 or page books, so it was a year's worth of work really to do those 6 trade paperback type size, whatever prestige format, whatever they were.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that was a nice project, and it also it unlocked the door to being invited to Star Wars Comic Cons and stuff like that, or things where sometimes it was more Star Wars than superhero stuff, and so it was on my bucket list, to do Star Wars stuff. So that was cool, and somewhere in there I got to do some Batman, and then
Hmm. Hmm.
with Galassi I got to do some later, a couple issues. First of all, it was with the guy I was doing GI Joe with, Mark Bright, and he had
Hmm.
been doing some Batman, and we it's so weird when we got those issues. I mean, I was still working at Marvel and doing GI Joe with him and all that stuff, and it was just this. It was an issue with birds. It's something not Birds of Prey, but it had a name something like that, and I think the Penguin was in it and stuff. It was supposed to be a 2 issue series or a 2 issue arc,
Hmm.
and Mark screwed up and couldn't get it done or something, and so we lost the second issue. So I only got the 1 issue with him, but it came out at the time that the Batman movie came out with Jack Nicholson, the first one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Uh-huh.
very first, yeah, and the sales went up huge. A couple 100,000 or something. So we
Mhm.
got this big royalty check, and it was like, what? And I never, ever again, working on books where movies came out, never saw that interaction or the results like that, being on a book like, if you're on Spider-Man. After that, I was like, if I could just be on Spider-Man when the movie comes out. Of course, it never came out when it was supposed to. I mean, it was supposed to be what's his name, the director of Terminator and stuff.
Oh
Did
yeah,
the
James Cameron.
Yeah,
Yeah,
James
yeah.
Cameron. They paid him $500,000 retainer and all that stuff. Never worked out. There was a bunch of legal crap. So I never got to be on the Spider-Man book when the movie came out. But other times I was on books when movies came out, and there was just zero, effect. The books
Huh.
didn't sell. It just like didn't matter. So that one time, it did. I mean, the Batman thing, it's so weird. And then I did the couple issues with Galassi later that were, it was just fun to do them. It was after we did the Star Wars stuff. And it was like, okay, I've done some Batman. It's like, check the box. It's like,
Right,
okay,
right.
did it. But DC wasn't real, they weren't real friendly as far as, inking. They had their inkers and stuff. And you'd almost have to bring your penciler who would want you and go, I want this guy, to ink me, because they were like
Mhm.
trying to find room for their own guys. So, but it's okay. It was, got most of the stuff done that I wanted to, got to work on a lot of stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, you got to work with Mike Richardson after going to high school with him. So was that
well, no, he
strange
graduated
or?
before I did.
Oh,
So
okay.
I never saw him, it's like I only met him later on and then found out, hey, he graduated before I was a freshman. It's like,
Ah,
so he's really old. If I'm old, that makes him really old. It's like, yeah, but no, I met him through Chris, and he had like four, I think four Pegasus bookstores, comic book stores, and a
yeah.
restaurant called Magellan's, and then he got a line of credit and started the company, and yeah, it was interesting. I mean, yeah, we always talked to Mike about things, and he was all a big visionary. He's kind of like Walt Disney type guy. He's always like looking out there. It's like, what can we do? What can we do this? And he wanted to do movies, and he wanted to do toys, and wanted to do books, and they did a lot of stuff that they did what the Japanese stuff that was like a big thing where they did a lot of
Mhm.
they got people that could translate and turned it into English. They could sell it in English, and they had some really great products and still do. I mean, obviously, but um, they did a lot of first type things. I remember it was very much creator, first, and of course Hellboy and all of the other
Mhm.
kinds of stuff
Mhm.
that came along. Plus, they had was it the right of first refusal for the 20th Century Fox stuff. So that was like Aliens and Predator and Star Wars and um, what Terminator, whatever, if they wanted to do it. But I think the Star Wars books were separate because they had to bid on those every 5 years, I think, and
Mhm.
then had to win the bid, and they managed to keep those books for what 30 years or something,
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
Marvel got them, because Disney bought Marvel, whatever. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I was pretty much done by 2012. I was done. I mean, I'd done some stuff at Marvel maybe in 2009, but I was getting treated like, here's another job to finish, or here's a special job and to work with Ivan on an Avengers issue. And then at the end of the job, it's like I was working on a graphic novel for Dark Horse, and I go, I got this contract. I have to finish this. So you're 2 weeks behind on this. You should have called me earlier. I'll do my best. And then it's like then they pulled the last 5 pages because they wanted to, had to get it done, or so they didn't give me the time I needed. And so I thought, this isn't going very well. It's time, and maybe it's time to move on. So I think I was officially retired by 2012. That was the last year I went to San Diego Con.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was Marvel's 50th anniversary, so I thought that was pretty appropriate.
Well, as you mentioned, you got to work on quite a number of things. What are you currently looking at? What currently has your creative attention?
I'd like to spend more time playing jazz guitar. I mean, it's like that's my
Mhm.
other love, and it's like during the pandemic, I was able to spend some time writing some arrangements for solo guitar because you're not playing with people so much. Maybe the computer, play along with the computer, but
Mhm. Mhm.
learn more tunes and so that was good. And then I bought a custom made guitar from Breedlove, which is a company in Bend here that makes really nice guitars, and it's like having a nylon string electric with a full neck and a cutaway, so that you can reach all of these, voicings and things that are difficult in jazz. And so I'd like to spend more time with that, but it's been such a tumultuous last year with, deaths and, in the family and, and being, I mean, just all kinds of junk happened that it just
Mhm.
hasn't been the kind of year that, you feel like, oh, I'm going to have fun being creative. So I
Mhm.
did 12 shows, but I think I'm kind of burnt on the show thing. I just did Free Comic Book Day yesterday, and that was actually fun over in Vancouver. A lot of good fans, and it was only 5 hours, so it was like but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Still
and
unpacking from that, you said.
yeah, exactly. And we've got one more major show. I'm not going to do East Coast stuff this year, so no Heroes Con and no Terrific Con and stuff. But I will do the Summer Con in Washington, which is in Puyallup. It's like their big fairgrounds area, but it's got multiple buildings, and it's turned into a pretty big show. It's a 3 day, and I haven't been there for what 4 years, something like
Oh,
that,
wow.
because I
Yeah.
just haven't
Yeah.
been able to. I've been busy. So that should be a good show. It's in the middle of June. And then nothing
Nice.
until the show in Portland, which is the Rose City show in September. And then my daughter's pregnant, so second grandchild coming. I think she has a
Congratulations.
scheduled C-section on the 9th of September. So that'll be a big deal. That's coming up. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a better year. I mean, it's we're working on it. So
Yeah.
creatively, I mean, I don't mind. I like doing commissions, and I've got a bunch. I got like six sitting on my computer desktop here that I have to get to. And but I've done a few really interesting ones lately that involved multiple characters and different sizes and stuff. And so
Nice.
that's the extent. I mean, I'm not gonna like my friends like Carl Kiesel and Ron Randall. Ron's still got his Trekker thing, and he's doing. They're both doing. And was it Impossible Jones for Carl? And they're
Hmm.
doing
Hmm.
the Kickstarters, and they were there yesterday. I got there to this. This is a big store. I like comics, and they were already setting up. And I thought I was getting there early, and there was like I wanted to chat with them, and but there wasn't enough room in the back. So I had to be up front with a table. So I didn't really get to spend that much time with them. But, it's like, I think it's great that they're doing it and they're excited about it. And it's, something they have ownership in. You got some skin in the game when it's your product.
Hmm.
But it's not what I want to do. I mean, it's like I've done enough comics. I'm not looking to do my character Blazer or I'm gonna do a special story or do an arc or something like that. I just think I have other things. I like to hike and bike and do other kinds of activities. Camp and go see places. You can do a little more traveling. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that sounds wonderful. It sounds like a good way to live, and it sounds like you have a pivotal year with a new grandchild on the way and
yeah,
all sorts of wonderful developments.
yeah. We got to look forward to those things. That's good. Yeah. Last year was the year of losing people. This year, let's have it be a good year of the new, in with the new.
Agreed.
So
Agreed. One final question here, and we can of course mention anything else that you'd like to, but if folks out there want to follow along and see your work or add to your commissions list, how do they go about doing that? Is that a connection that you'd like to share?
sure. I mean, my Facebook, and usually what I do is I post on Instagram. So that's at Randy Emberlin. So it's just at and then my name. And you can DM me there, direct mail me. And then usually I'd like to go with, after that initial contact, I'll go with emails because then I can send you, my price list and some samples of, covers like sketch covers I've done or whatever. But yeah, my email is remberlin@frontier.com. So that's fine. You can do that, or if you can't remember that, you can just go to Instagram and just go at Randy Emberlin. And Facebook isn't much different. I think it's Randy.Emberlin or something, at Facebook.com or something. So and I always double post. So if I post a picture on one, I'll post it on
Mhm.
Facebook as well, so you can see it. But I don't mess with anything else. It's like too much social. I mean, as it is,
Agreed.
like I was really, I felt really good that I posted every day last week going into Free Comic Book Day for them, because they
Hmm.
were nice enough to ask and they did some advertising as well. and I just, tagged them, tagged the store, used a picture, put a bunch of stuff. I did an ad every day, so did my story, whatever, so it could change every day, and that's enough, man. It's like there's just something you could spend your life, doing this and just like scrolling and looking in, it's like on the
True.
phone. It's like I think I read a science fiction story. Um, I can't remember the author, but I think he did that one. What was it? Some Weekends with Maury or something like it was a. It was. I think he wrote. Um, he was a gosh.
Was that Mitch Albom?
I think it was. Yes, it was.
Uh-huh,
That's who it
uh-huh.
was. Yeah. And the guy was, he was dying, and he was having all of these conversations with him. But he wrote some science fiction stuff that was that kind of interesting.
Hmm.
And one of them was kind of a world in which the people walked around, looking at screens, and it's like every is like in this other world except for the world that they're really living in. And I thought,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we're kind of seeing. It's just scary, when you go out to dinner and there's a family and the kids and the parents are all on their phone, and you
true,
go,
true.
there's no connection. What's going on here? This is just weird.
Yeah,
So yeah, so I want to avoid tons of social media. I don't mind doing this kind of stuff, informative, fun stuff, and
I
it's bad
appreciate
enough
that.
having to do, work with keep emails and other, text messaging and all that kind of other stuff that's going on. So, but yeah, if you're smart, you'll spend more time outside. It's like,
Yes. Nature therapy is good. Hiking is
yeah,
good. Yes.
that's right. I already had a walk in today once, so that's good. That's a good start.
That's
So
a summer resolution. I don't know. We were talking about the new year, so summer will be more hiking this year than it was last
good.
year for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I always say that, and it's like sometimes it happens. It's like I wish, just keep hoping. The weather. I mean, the weather here has been
Mhm.
interesting. It's weird. I mean, Portland or Oregon weather. It usually, I mean, it does rain, but sometimes you don't get very rainy winters, and it'll be cold, and clear, which is nice. You can get your bike out and ride in the sun, but it's still cold. But it's been rainy. But we just came off 2 weeks of sun before this rain started this last week, and next week it's going to be 80,
Mhm.
84, whatever. So I'm waiting to get on my bike, and start doing some riding and stuff and play golf again. That's something I also do is I like to play golf, and I played in high school, and my daughter played well enough to play in college. So that's just it's another thing to do. It's another fun thing. I like the beauty of the courses, and I can't afford to belong to some rich club, but it's still there's lots of great public courses, that's fun to play. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time. I will let you get back to commissions and all the things. It sounds like you have quite the to-do list. So,
yeah, I got a couple from yesterday.
oh, nice, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, well, thank you so much, Randy, and glad to talk anytime.
yeah. Thank you. That was fun.